Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, staring at the massive alien structure floating in space before him. It was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. The station gleamed with strange metals that seemed to shift colors in the starlight. After 3 months of traveling beyond the edge of known space, they had finally found what they were looking for. They had found aliens. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said Commander Lisa Hayes from her station. She was a sharp officer with 10 years of experience, and Jake trusted her instincts more than anyone else on the ship. "It's in multiple languages. They're trying to communicate with us." Jake felt his heart race. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. "Put it through," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life. The creature that appeared was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. It stood nearly 8 feet tall with a body that resembled a massive insect. Its exoskeleton was deep purple, and 4 arms extended from its torso. But the eyes were what caught Jake's attention. They were intelligent, calculating, and surprisingly expressive. "Greetings, travelers," the alien said in perfect English. The voice was translated through some kind of device, giving it a mechanical quality. "I am Ambassador Zixthor of the Velcron Confederation. We have been watching your species with great interest. Welcome to the greater galaxy." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison, representing the people of Earth. We come in peace, seeking friendship and knowledge." Zixthor's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. "Then you have come to the right place. The Confederation is home to 12 species, all living in harmony. We would be honored to welcome humanity as friends." Over the next 2 weeks, Jake and his crew were treated like honored guests. They were given tours of Velcron facilities, shown advanced technologies that made Earth's achievements look primitive, and introduced to various alien species. Lisa remained cautious, noting small details that bothered her. The Velcrons never let them see certain areas. Their answers to technical questions were vague, and sometimes she caught Velcron officials watching them with expressions that didn't seem friendly at all. "Something feels wrong," Lisa told Jake one evening in the captain's quarters. "They're too eager to please, too interested in our defensive capabilities. Every conversation somehow turns to questions about Earth's military." Jake nodded slowly. He had noticed it too. "I've been thinking the same thing. But we have to be careful. This is first contact. We can't afford to be paranoid. And we can't afford to be naive," Lisa replied. The ceremonial gathering was held in the Grand Hall of the Velcron capital world, Thalrex. Thousands of aliens from different species filled the enormous chamber. Jake wore his dress uniform, feeling both proud and nervous. This was supposed to be the moment when humanity was officially welcomed into the galactic community. Ambassador Zixthor stood at the center of a raised platform. "Today we celebrate the arrival of a new species. The humans have traveled far to reach us, driven by curiosity and hope." The alien's voice echoed through the chamber. "And today we show them the truth of the galaxy." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something in Zixthor's tone had changed. The lights in the hall suddenly dimmed. Armed Velcron soldiers emerged from hidden doorways surrounding Jake and his crew. On the viewing screens around the chamber, images appeared showing Velcron warships dropping out of hyperspace around Earth. "What is this?" Jake demanded, his hand moving toward his sidearm. A dozen weapons pointed at him. Zixthor's mandibles clicked, but this time it sounded like laughter. "This is how the galaxy truly works, human. The strong take what they want from the weak. Your species is primitive, emotional, and divided. Your world is rich in resources we need. You should feel honored. You will serve the Confederation, just like 17 other species before you." Lisa's console beeped urgently. She glanced at it, her face going pale. "Captain, they're attacking Earth. 3 cities just went dark. Sydney, Mumbai, and Mexico City. They're destroying population centers." Jake felt rage and horror flood through him. "You're monsters." "We are pragmatists," Zixthor replied calmly. "Resistance is pointless. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Surrender now and we will spare the rest of your population. They will make excellent workers for our mining colonies. Refuse and we will turn your planet into ash." Through the viewing screens, Jake watched as massive Velcron warships fired blue energy beams at Earth's cities. Millions of people were dying, and he was helpless to stop it. The Horizon's weapons were disabled. They were trapped on an alien world surrounded by enemies. But Lisa was already moving. Her fingers flew across her console, hidden from view of the guards. She had been studying Velcron systems for 2 weeks, learning their protocols and frequencies. As the Velcrons focused on Jake, she activated a hidden subroutine. It would take several minutes, but if she could just keep them distracted. "You demand our surrender?" Jake said loudly, stepping forward to draw attention. "You attack defenseless cities and call yourselves strong? You're cowards hiding behind superior technology." Zixthor moved closer, towering over the human captain. "Your anger is meaningless. In 48 hours, your government will surrender unconditionally. Your species will serve us, or it will cease to exist. These are the only options." Lisa's console gave a soft beep that only she could hear. The data packet was away, transmitted in a tight beam burst toward Earth. She had sent everything they had learned about Velcron technology: ship designs, weapon frequencies, tactical formations, and defensive weaknesses. It would take days to reach Earth, but it might give her people a chance. "Take them to the detention cells," Zixthor ordered. "Let them watch as their world falls." Jake and his crew were dragged away. As they walked through the corridors, Jake caught Lisa's eye. She gave him the smallest nod. He didn't know what she had done, but he trusted her completely. The detention cell was cold and dark. Through a small window, Jake could see stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, under attack and facing destruction. He thought about his family, his friends, everyone he had ever known. Were they still alive? Were they suffering? "We failed," said Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the ship's navigator. He sat with his head in his hands. "We led them right to Earth." "No," Lisa said firmly. "They already knew where Earth was. They've been watching us for months, maybe years. This was always their plan." "Then what do we do?" asked Ensign Rachel Kim, the youngest member of the crew. Her voice shook with fear and anger. Jake stood up straight, his jaw set with determination. "We survive. We wait for our chance, and we make them regret ever threatening humanity." On Earth, chaos reigned. 3 major cities were gone, simply erased from existence by weapons humanity couldn't comprehend. Billions of people watched in horror as alien warships filled the skies. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Military leaders from every nation gathered to coordinate a response. Colonel Ryan Bennett sat in the command center of the Unified Defense Command, buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. He was a career soldier who had seen combat in 3 different wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. Reports flooded in from around the world. Panic in the streets, governments declaring martial law, every military installation on high alert. "Sir, we're receiving a data transmission," called out a technician. "It's from the horizon. Captain Morrison's ship." Ryan's eyes widened. "Put it on screen." The data that appeared made his blood run cold. Detailed specifications of alien warships, weapon systems, shield frequencies, tactical doctrines, and a personal message from Commander Hayes. "They think we're weak. They think we'll surrender. Prove them wrong." Ryan stood up, his mind already racing through possibilities. "Get me every scientist, engineer, and military strategist we have. I want this data analyzed within 6 hours, and get President Grant on the line. We need to make a decision." President Olivia Grant appeared on the secure video link within minutes. Her face was drawn and tired, but her eyes blazed with determination. "Colonel Bennett, give me options." "They've given us 48 hours to surrender," Ryan said. "They expect us to roll over and accept slavery or extinction, but we have detailed intelligence on their technology. If we can adapt quickly enough, we might have a chance." "A chance to do what? Beat them? They destroyed 3 cities in seconds." "A chance to bloody their nose," Ryan replied. "To show them that humanity doesn't break easily. Maybe we can't win, but we can make them pay for every inch they take." President Grant was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Send the data to every research facility we have. Mobilize every resource. And Colonel, prepare for war. We're not surrendering." In Nevada, Dr. Sophie Turner received the data packet at 3 in the morning. She was the head of the Advanced Weapons Research Facility, a secret installation where humanity's brightest minds worked on cutting-edge technology. She had been asleep when her phone rang, but the moment she saw what they had sent her, exhaustion vanished. The Velcron shields operated on rotating frequency patterns. Their weapons used a specific type of plasma that could be disrupted. Their ship hulls were strong but had weak points near the engine cores. Every piece of information was a vulnerability waiting to be exploited. "Wake up, Every." The 48 hours passed in a blur of desperate activity. In laboratories across Earth, scientists worked without sleep, racing against time to understand alien technology that was centuries ahead of their own. Dr. Sophie Turner stood in the center of the research facility, surrounded by holographic displays showing Velcron ship schematics. The shield frequency rotates every 12 seconds, she explained to the assembled team of engineers and physicists, but the rotation follows a mathematical pattern. If we can predict the frequency, we can time our shots to hit when the shields are at their weakest point. A young physicist named Gary raised his hand. But our weapons don't fire fast enough to exploit a window that small. We'd need to completely redesign our plasma cannons. Sophie smiled grimly. Then that's exactly what we're going to do. We have 36 hours left. Get to work. In another part of the facility, engineers were taking apart one of Earth's newest fighter jets and rebuilding it with modifications based on the Velcron data. The work was crude and rushed, but it might be enough. Lieutenant Ben Carter watched the process, knowing that he would be the one testing this experimental fighter. "You don't have to do this," said his commanding officer, Major Helen Price. "This is extremely dangerous. The modifications might not work. The fighter could explode the moment you fire the weapons." Ben's jaw tightened. "My sister was in Sydney. I haven't been able to reach her. Someone has to test this fighter, and I'm the best pilot we have." Helen nodded slowly. She had lost people too. Everyone had. Then make it count. At the Unified Defense Command, Colonel Ryan Bennett was coordinating with military leaders from every nation. The past 2 days had accomplished something that decades of diplomacy couldn't. Humanity was finally united. Every country had put aside their differences to face the common threat. "The Velcrons expect our surrender in 12 hours, Ryan said, studying the tactical display. "Instead, we're going to hit them with everything we have. It won't be enough to drive them away, but we need to show them that we can fight back." General Liu from China shook his head. "Their ships are too powerful. Our missiles can't penetrate their shields. Our fighters can't match their speed. This will be a massacre." "Maybe," Ryan admitted. "But Dr. Turner's team has given us a weapon. It's untested and dangerous, but it's a chance. And right now, a chance is all we need." President Olivia Grant had spent the past 2 days in constant communication with world leaders and her own military advisors. She had been elected on a platform of peace and scientific progress. Now she was leading humanity into a war they couldn't win, but surrender wasn't an option. She had seen the intelligence reports about what happened to species conquered by the Velcrons: slavery, brutality, and the complete destruction of their cultures. She appeared on every screen across the planet, addressing all of humanity at once. Her face was tired but determined. "My fellow humans, the Velcrons have demanded our surrender. They believe we are weak and divided. They think we will simply accept slavery or death, but they don't understand who we are. Yes, we are afraid. Yes, we have suffered terrible losses. But we are also strong and we are together. I stand here today to tell these aliens and the entire galaxy that Earth will never surrender. We will fight for our freedom, for our families, and for our future. To every person listening, I say this: be brave, be strong, and have faith. We are humanity, and we will prevail." The speech was broadcast across every network, translated into every language. In cities around the world, people gathered in the streets not in panic but in defiance. They had lost millions already, but they refused to lose their freedom. On the Velcron flagship, War Master Keltharn watched the human president's speech with amusement. "She speaks well for a primitive," he said to his officers. "But words mean nothing against plasma cannons. When the deadline passes, we will demonstrate our power again. Choose another city. Somewhere large. Tokyo, perhaps." Commander Vextar, who led the Velcron fleet, bowed slightly. "As you command, War Master. Though I must say this seems excessive. They are already defeated. Why waste more ammunition?" "Because," Keltharn replied coldly, "the other species in the galaxy need to see what happens to those who defy the Confederation. Fear is our greatest weapon. Once the humans are broken, no one will dare resist us for another 1,000 years." But what the Velcrons didn't know was that humanity had spent those 48 hours doing more than just preparing weapons. They had been studying every scrap of data from the horizon. They had analyzed Velcron tactics, their formation patterns, and their strategic thinking. And they had discovered something interesting. Lisa Hayes had included a note in her data transmission. The Velcrons were arrogant. They had conquered 17 species using the exact same approach every time. They never adapted their tactics because they never needed to. They expected their enemies to behave predictably, to panic and scatter when faced with overwhelming force. Colonel Ryan Bennett stood in the command center, watching the countdown clock. 6 hours until the deadline. The Velcron fleet hung in orbit like a sword over Earth's head. 50 massive warships, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. All units are in position, reported his tactical officer. Dr. Turner confirms that the modified fighters are ready. Lieutenant Carter is standing by. Ryan took a deep breath. Then let's show these aliens what humans can do. Give the order. Attack. High above Earth, Lieutenant Ben Carter sat in the cockpit of his modified fighter. The new weapons hummed with barely contained energy. His hands were steady on the controls despite his racing heart. Around him, 100 other fighters launched from hidden bases and carrier ships. All wings, this is Carter, he said over the communication channel. Stay tight and follow the attack pattern. We get one shot at this, so make it count. The fighters accelerated toward the Velcron fleet, which hung in orbit like sleeping giants. On the Velcron flagship, alarms began to sound. War Master, the humans are launching an attack, Commander Vextar said with disbelief. Fighter craft, approximately 100 units. Keltharn laughed. Foolish. They throw away their pilots' lives for nothing. Destroy them. The Velcron ships powered up their weapons. Blue energy beams lanced out toward the approaching human fighters. 3 ships exploded immediately, then 5 more. The Velcrons had the advantage in range and firepower, but the human fighters didn't scatter or retreat. They kept coming, weaving through the defensive fire with desperate courage. Ben Carter watched 2 of his wingmates die, their fighters consumed by Velcron plasma. His hands gripped the controls tighter. Wait for it, he muttered to himself, watching the shield frequency indicator that Dr. Turner had installed. The Velcron shields rotated through their pattern, cycling through different frequencies. Wait for it. Now he fired. The modified plasma cannon unleashed a burst of energy timed perfectly to match the shield's weak point. The bolt punched through the Velcron ship's defenses and struck the hull directly. The alien warship shuddered as explosions rippled across its surface. I got one, Ben shouted. The shield trick works. All units fire on my mark. Across the battlefield, human fighters coordinated their attacks, timing their shots to exploit the brief windows when the Velcron shields were vulnerable. More alien ships took damage. One, then another exploded in brilliant fireballs. On the flagship, Keltharn stared at the tactical display in shock. How are they doing this? Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate our shields. They're timing their shots, Vextar said, his voice tight with sudden worry. They've analyzed our shield frequency patterns. War Master, they've adapted our own technology against us. Impossible. They've only had 48 hours. And yet they're destroying our ships. The battle raged for 15 minutes. Human losses were heavy. Nearly half of the fighter wing was destroyed. But when the surviving fighters retreated back to Earth, they left behind 12 destroyed Velcron warships and 8 more severely damaged. For the first time in 2 centuries, the Velcron Confederation had lost a battle against a newly contacted species. The galaxy's attention suddenly focused on the small blue planet that had dared to fight back. In the command center, Ryan Bennett watched the battle results with grim satisfaction. They had paid a terrible price, but they had proven something crucial. The Velcrons could bleed. Get me casualty reports, he ordered. And get those fighters rearmed. They'll be back. On the Velcron flagship, Keltharn's composure had cracked. How did primitive savages defeat our ships? This shouldn't be possible. Commander Vextar studied the tactical data. War Master, I recommend we withdraw and reassess the situation. These humans are not like the other species we've conquered. They learn too quickly. They adapt too fast. Withdraw? Keltharn's voice was ice. We do not retreat from primitives. Double our forces. I want 100 ships in orbit within 3 days. We will crush them utterly. But even as he gave the order, doubt crept into his mind. In 17 previous conquests, no species had ever fought back successfully. The humans should have surrendered after the first demonstration. Instead, they had attacked. They had studied Velcron technology and found ways to counter it in less than 2 days. Across the galaxy, other species watched the battle recordings with 6 months had passed since the first battle, and Earth looked nothing like it had before the war began. Every industrial facility had been converted to military production. Factories that once made cars now produced fighter jets. Shipyards that built cargo vessels now constructed warships. The entire planet had become a weapon pointed at the Velcron Confederation. Katie Morgan stood in the construction bay of the orbital shipyard, watching as workers put the final touches on the Valkyrie-class fighter. She was an engineer who had spent her career designing commercial aircraft. Now she was building weapons of war, and she was good at it. The new shield generators are integrated, she told her assistant, checking the specifications on her tablet. These fighters are faster, tougher, and hit harder than anything we've built before. Plus, we've incorporated the Velcron power core technology we captured from the destroyed ships. How many can we produce? Asked Colonel Ryan Bennett, who had come to inspect the new fighters. We have 12 production facilities running at full capacity, Katie replied. We can build 40 fighters per week. In another month, we'll double that number. Ryan nodded with satisfaction. What would have taken years in peacetime was happening in months. Necessity had made humanity efficient in ways they never imagined possible. And the battleship? Katie's eyes lit up. Come with me. I'll show you. They took a shuttle to another section of the orbital shipyard. When the viewing port opened, Ryan caught his breath. The ship under construction was massive, nearly a mile long. Its hull gleamed with new armor plating, and weapon ports lined every surface. We're calling her the Defiant, Katie said proudly, first of the Guardian-class battleships. She'll be ready for trials in 3 weeks. How did you build something this big so fast? Modular construction, Katie explained. We built the sections on Earth and assembled them in orbit. Plus, we're using 3D printing technology on a scale never attempted before. The Velcrons would need 5 years to build something like this. We did it in 7 months. Admiral Scott Henderson arrived at the shipyard the next day to take command of the Defiant. He was a veteran of the Earth Defense Force, having served for 30 years. He had fought in the first battle against the Velcrons and had watched friends die when their ships were destroyed. Now he would command humanity's most powerful warship. She's beautiful, Scott said, walking through the ship's corridors. Every system was state-of-the-art, combining human innovation with adapted Velcron technology. When can we take her into combat? Soon, Katie promised. But we're not just building ships. We're changing how we fight. She was right. Humanity had spent 6 months studying every aspect of Velcron warfare. They had learned that the aliens relied on overwhelming firepower and rigid tactical formations. They expected enemies to react predictably. But humans were anything but predictable. Lieutenant Ben Carter had become something of a legend among pilots. He had survived 12 missions and shot down 15 Velcron fighters. He now led an entire squadron, training new pilots in the aggressive, unpredictable tactics that seemed to confuse their enemies. The Velcrons think in straight lines, Ben told his squadron during a briefing. They expect us to retreat when outnumbered. They expect us to scatter when under fire. So we do the opposite. We charge when they expect retreat. We group together when they expect us to spread out. We turn their expectations against them. A young pilot named Chris raised his hand. But sir, that sounds suicidal. Ben grinned. It is, but it works. The Velcrons are predictable. Once you understand their patterns, you can beat them even when they have better technology. While humanity built its military strength, something else was happening across the galaxy. Ambassador Nicole Reed had been appointed as humanity's first diplomatic representative. Her job was to contact the other species in the Velcron Confederation and offer them something the Velcrons never did: a choice. Nicole worked from a hidden facility on Mars, sending encrypted messages to planets under Velcron control. The responses she received were surprising. 3 alien species had secretly contacted her, expressing their desire to break away from the Confederation. The Velcrons conquered us 70 years ago, said Ambassador Krell of the Kessian species during a secure video conference. Krell looked like a tall, thin humanoid with silver skin and large eyes. We serve them because we have no choice. But we remember what freedom was like. Then join us, Nicole urged. Fight alongside humanity. Together we can defeat them. The Velcrons are too powerful, Krell replied sadly. They have resources we cannot match. They had resources, Nicole corrected. But every battle weakens them. Every ship we destroy is one less they can use against you. And we're getting stronger while they're getting weaker. The conversation planted seeds of rebellion across the Confederation. Species that had accepted their fate for decades began to wonder if freedom was possible after all. On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison had been rescued during a daring raid on a Velcron prison ship. He returned home as a hero, bringing valuable intelligence about Velcron infrastructure and tactics. His debriefing with military command lasted for 3 days. The Confederation is built on fear, Jake explained, showing holographic maps of Velcron space. They control their conquered species through brutality and overwhelming force. But it's all bluff. Their military is spread thin across dozens of systems. They haven't fought a real war in over 2 centuries. What about their technology advantage? Asked Colonel Ryan Bennett. We're closing that gap fast, Jake said. The Velcrons are complacent. They haven't innovated in generations because they didn't need to, but we're adapting their technology and improving it. Give us another 6 months and we'll be their equals. Commander Lisa Hayes had been rescued in the same raid. She was promoted to captain and given command of a new ship, the Ranger. It was smaller than the Defiant, but faster and more maneuverable. Lisa spent weeks training her crew, preparing them for the battles ahead. Speed is our advantage, she told her officers. The Velcron ships are powerful but slow. We hit them hard and fast, then get out before they can respond. We use the environment to our advantage. Asteroid fields, planetary rings, nebulas, anything that limits their sensors and targeting systems. The Velcrons, meanwhile, were preparing their response. War Master Keltharn had been publicly humiliated by the initial defeat. He had promised the High Council that he would crush humanity utterly. Now he was assembling the largest fleet the Confederation had launched in a century. 300 warships gathered at the staging area near Velcron space. Keltharn stood on the bridge of his flagship reviewing the battle plan. The target was Proxima Centauri, humanity's first colony world. Only 15,000 humans lived there, but it was a symbol of human expansion into space. Destroying it would break human morale and prove the Confederation's power. War Master, are you certain we need this many ships? Asked Commander Vextar. Proxima Centauri has minimal defenses. I'm not taking chances with these humans, Keltharn replied. They've proven resourceful. We will overwhelm them with numbers. There will be no possibility of another humiliating defeat. The fleet jumped to hyperspace heading toward Proxima Centauri. Intelligence reports suggested the colony was protected by only 20 human ships. It should be an easy victory, but Keltharn couldn't shake his unease. Something about humans was deeply wrong. They learned too fast. They adapted too quickly. They never did what they were supposed to do. On Proxima Centauri, Captain Lisa Hayes received the warning from Earth's long-range sensors. 300 Velcron ships were coming. She had 20 ships under her command, including the Ranger. The odds were 15-1 against her. We can't win this, said her first officer, Lieutenant Danny Cole. We should evacuate the colony and retreat. Lisa shook her head. If we run, they'll chase us all the way to Earth. We have to make our stand here, and we have one advantage they don't know about. What's that? Lisa smiled grimly. We know this system better than they do, and we're about to turn it into a death trap. The Proxima Centauri system had a massive asteroid belt, remnants of a planet that had broken apart millions of years ago. Lisa's ships had spent the past 3 months preparing the battlefield. They had placed mines throughout the belt. They had rigged asteroids with explosives. They had created false sensor readings and holographic projections to confuse enemy targeting systems. When the Velcron fleet arrived, they saw exactly what they expected, a small force of human ships trying to defend the colony. Keltharn ordered an immediate attack. All ships advance in formation, he commanded. Destroy the defenders, then bombard the colony. The massive Velcron fleet moved forward like a wall of metal and death. Human ships retreated into the asteroid belt, appearing to flee in panic. The Velcrons followed, confident in their overwhelming numbers. Then the trap sprang shut. Asteroids that had been rigged with explosives detonated, creating debris fields that damaged Velcron ships. Mines activated, targeting the larger vessels. The human ships appeared and disappeared among the asteroids, using the environment for cover while they fired precisely timed shots at Velcron weak points. They're using the terrain against us, Vextar shouted. Our sensors can't track them through all this debris. The news of the Battle of Proxima Centauri reached every corner of the galaxy within days. Species that had never heard of humans suddenly knew their name. Some saw them as potential allies. Others saw them as a dangerous new threat. But everyone agreed on one thing. The Velcron Confederation was no longer invincible. On the Velcron capital world, the High Council met in emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from all 12 member species, though most were there not by choice but by conquest. The death of War Master Keltharn had sent shockwaves through the military command structure. "We have lost over 200 ships," said Councillor Thexlar, the oldest member of the council. "Two major battles against a species that barely has spaceflight capability. This is unacceptable. The humans are more resourceful than we anticipated," replied newly appointed War Master Zekthar. He was younger than Keltharn and had argued for a more cautious approach from the beginning. "I recommend we negotiate a peace treaty. Allow them their independence in exchange for non-aggression." The chamber erupted in angry clicking and hissing. Fleet Commander Draxus, a hardline military leader, stood up from his seat. His exoskeleton was scarred from decades of warfare. "Peace? With primitives who have humiliated us?" Draxus's voice was filled with rage. "If we show weakness now, every conquered species will rebel. The Confederation will collapse. We must crush the humans completely, no matter the cost." The council was divided. Some supported negotiation. Others demanded total war. The debate raged for hours, but ultimately the decision came down to politics and fear. If they made peace with humans, they would appear weak. If they continued the war, they might lose more ships and resources. On Earth, President Olivia Grant faced similar debates. Some advisors argued that humanity should press their advantage and go on the offensive. Others wanted to focus on defense and rebuilding. "We've won battles, but not the war," President Grant said during a cabinet meeting. "The Velkrons still have thousands of ships. If they commit their full military might against us, we could be overwhelmed." Admiral Scott Henderson disagreed. "Ma'am, we can't just sit and wait for them to attack again. We need to take the fight to them. Show them that attacking Earth was the biggest mistake they ever made." "The Admiral is right," added Colonel Ryan Bennett. "Defense isn't enough. We need to destabilize their entire confederation. Support rebellions, free their conquered species, turn their empire against itself." Dr. Sophie Turner had been working on something that could change the entire war. She presented her findings to the military leadership in a secure briefing room. "We've cracked their communications protocols," Sophie explained, displaying holographic data streams. "We can now intercept and translate Velkron transmissions. More importantly, we can communicate with their conquered species." Ambassador Nicole Reed immediately saw the implications. "We can coordinate with resistance movements. Help them organize. Give them hope. And weapons," added Admiral Henderson. "If we arm their enemies from within, the Velkrons will have to fight on multiple fronts." President Grant made her decision. "Do it. Reach out to every species under Velkron control. Offer them support, weapons, and the promise of freedom. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for everyone who suffered under Velkron tyranny." Nicole's team began sending encrypted messages across Velkron space. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly saw hope. The Kessians were the first to openly rebel, attacking Velkron supply depots and freeing prisoners. Within weeks, 4 more species joined the uprising. Alex Chen was one of the first human operatives sent behind enemy lines. He was a communications specialist who spoke 6 languages and had a gift for making connections with aliens. He landed on a conquered world called Draxus Prime, home to a species known as the Drax. "Why should we trust humans?" asked the Drax resistance leader, a scarred warrior named Kelvar. "You could be spies for the Velkrons." Alex showed them weapons and supplies that Earth had sent. "We're giving you the means to fight. We're not asking for anything in return except that you stand up for your own freedom. The Velkrons think they can control the galaxy through fear. We're going to prove them wrong." Kelvar examined the weapons, impressed by their quality. "The Velkrons took our world 50 years ago. They killed anyone who resisted. But if you're truly offering us a chance to fight back, then the Drax will stand with humanity." Similar conversations were happening across a dozen worlds. The Velkron Confederation, which had seemed like a monolithic empire, was fracturing from within. On the Velkron capital, Fleet Commander Draxus watched the reports with growing alarm. Rebellions were spreading like wildfire. Military resources were being stretched thin as they tried to suppress uprisings on multiple worlds simultaneously. "This is the humans' doing," Draxus told the High Council. "They're coordinating these rebellions, supplying weapons and spreading propaganda. We're fighting a multi-front war, exactly what they wanted." War Master Zekthar tried to maintain calm. "We can still negotiate. Offer concessions to the rebellious species. Promise them better treatment." "Weakness," Draxus roared. "Every concession makes us look vulnerable. I say we make an example. Choose one rebellious world and destroy it completely. Show everyone what happens to those who defy us. The High Council was deadlocked, but Draxus was not a patient being. That night he staged a military coup. His loyal troops surrounded the council chambers and arrested War Master Zekthar. By morning, Draxus had declared himself the new War Master and announced a policy of total war. Every rebellion will be crushed, Draxus proclaimed in a galaxy-wide broadcast. Every species that defies us will be exterminated, and the humans who started this chaos will be hunted to extinction. We will activate our ultimate weapon. The ultimate weapon was something the Velkrons had kept hidden for centuries. It was called a Devastator, a massive orbital platform equipped with a core-breaching weapon that could literally tear a planet apart. It was ancient technology, salvaged from a dead civilization, and the Velkrons had 3 of them. Draxus ordered one of the Devastators moved toward Earth. The journey would take 3 weeks, but once it arrived, Earth would have only hours before it was destroyed. Captain Jake Morrison was now leading intelligence operations from a base on Luna. When his team intercepted communications about the Devastator, his blood ran cold. "They're going to destroy Earth," Jake said, showing the data to Admiral Henderson. "This weapon can crack a planet's core. Everything we've built, everyone we've saved, it will all be gone." Scott studied the information carefully. "How long do we have?" 3 weeks until it reaches Earth orbit. Then maybe 6 hours before it fires. Then we have 3 weeks to stop it. Scott called for an immediate meeting with all senior commanders. "We're going to intercept this Devastator before it reaches Earth. Gather every ship we have. This is going to be our biggest battle yet." The human fleet assembled near Mars. 60 ships, including the Defiant, were prepared for the mission. It was the largest force humanity had ever put together, but they would be facing a Velkron battle group of nearly 200 ships protecting the Devastator. Lieutenant Ben Carter would lead the fighter squadrons. He stood in the briefing room looking at the tactical display. The odds were bad, but they had faced worse. "We can't let that thing reach Earth," Ben told his pilots. "I don't care what it takes. We stop it here or we don't go home at all." Captain Lisa Hayes would command a diversionary force. Her mission was to draw away as many Velkron ships as possible, giving the main fleet a chance to reach the Devastator. "It's a suicide mission," her first officer Danny said quietly. Lisa smiled. "Maybe, but someone has to do it. And I'd rather die fighting than watch Earth burn from orbit." Dr. Sophie Turner had one last trick to share with the assault team. She called Lieutenant Ben Carter to her laboratory. "I've studied the Devastator's technical specifications," Sophie said, pulling up holographic schematics. "It's ancient technology, but it has one critical weakness. The power core is unstable. If you can overload it, the entire platform will tear itself apart." "How do I overload it?" Ben asked. "You'll need to board the platform and reach the core. Then you introduce a feedback loop in their power distribution system. It's similar to what we did with the Velkron shield frequencies, but on a much larger scale." Ben nodded slowly. "Boarding action. My favorite kind of mission." Sophie handed him a data chip. "Everything you need is on here. Ben, if you can't stop this thing, Earth dies. No pressure." "I work better under pressure," Ben replied with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the Devastator's projected route. In 3 weeks, they would face the largest battle of the war. Everyone knew that not all of them would return, but they also knew what was at stake. On Earth, President Grant addressed the world one more time. She didn't tell people about the Devastator. There was no point in causing panic. Instead, she talked about courage, sacrifice, and hope. "Our fleet is going out to meet the enemy," she said. "They're going to face terrible odds. Some of them won't come back. But they're doing it for us, for our future, and for every person in the galaxy who dreams of..." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly where intelligence had predicted the Devastator would be. Admiral Scott Henderson stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the massive alien weapon platform appear on their sensors. It was enormous, easily 5 times the size of the largest human battleship. Around it, like protective insects, were 180 Velkron warships. "There it is," Scott said quietly. "The thing that's supposed to kill our world." Katie Morgan, now serving as the Defiant's executive officer, checked her tactical display. "Sir, we're outnumbered 3-1, and that's not counting the Devastator itself." "Then we'd better be 3 times as good as them," Scott replied. He opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, This is Admiral Henderson. Today we fight for everything we love. For Earth. For our families. For our future. Some of us won't make it home. But if we succeed, billions of people will live because of what we do here. Make every shot count. Make every second matter. Let's show these aliens what humanity is made of. Captain Lisa Hayes led her squadron away from the main fleet, executing the diversionary plan. Her ship, the Ranger, along with 15 other vessels, began a high-speed attack run on the Velcron right flank. All ships, target their communications arrays and sensor nodes, Lisa commanded. Make them think we're the main attack. Lieutenant Cole, give me everything the engines have got. The Ranger and her squadron screamed toward the Velcron formation, weapons blazing. The aliens reacted exactly as predicted, pulling 70 ships away from the Devastator to intercept this apparent threat. On the Velcron flagship, Fleet Commander Draxus watched the human attack with cold satisfaction. They're using the same tactics as before, hit and run, distraction and deception, but I've studied their methods. Redirect the third battle group to cut off their escape route. We'll trap them. But Lisa had no intention of escaping. Her mission was to keep as many Velcron ships busy for as long as possible. Her squadron dove into the enemy formation, weaving between larger ships, firing at close range, and creating as much chaos as they could. We've got 40 ships on our tail, Danny shouted from the tactical station. Good, Lisa replied. That's 40 ships not protecting the Devastator. Keep them chasing us. While Lisa's squadron drew enemy fire, Admiral Henderson led the main assault toward the Devastator. The Defiant's massive cannons opened fire, supported by 45 other human ships. They hit the Velcron defensive line like a hammer. Focus fire on their capital ships, Scott ordered. Break through their formation. We need to reach that platform. The space battle became a chaotic swirl of energy beams, missiles, and explosions. Human ships used the aggressive, unpredictable tactics they had perfected over months of warfare. They attacked from multiple angles simultaneously, coordinated, their fire to overwhelm individual targets and never stayed still long enough to become easy targets themselves. Lieutenant Ben Carter led his fighter wing through the heart of the battle. His modified Valkyrie fighter danced through enemy fire, his targeting computer locking onto Velcron weak points with lethal precision. All fighters, stay close to the capital ships, Ben transmitted. Use them for cover and pick off their fighters. We need to clear a path for the boarding craft. Behind the fighter screen, a specialized assault shuttle named the Spearhead carried Ben's boarding team. Sergeant Megan Brooks commanded the Marine Squad, 20 of Earth's finest soldiers equipped with powered armor and advanced weapons. How are you feeling, Sergeant? Ben asked over the secure channel. Megan's voice came back steady and professional. Ready to make history, Lieutenant, or die trying. Let's try for the history option. The battle raged for 2 hours. Human losses mounted steadily. 8 ships were destroyed, including 2 of Lisa's squadron. But the Velcron losses were worse. 23 of their warships had been reduced to floating debris. The human fleet was slowly, painfully pushing through toward the Devastator. On the Velcron flagship, Draxus realized his mistake. The diversionary attack hadn't been the main threat. The humans had sacrificed ships to draw his forces out of position. Now the main fleet was dangerously close to the Devastator. All ships, return to defensive formation, he commanded. Protect the weapon platform at all costs. But it was too late. The Defiant, battered and damaged but still fighting, broke through the Velcron defensive line. Admiral Henderson brought his ship alongside the massive Devastator, close enough that the alien platform's automated defenses couldn't target them effectively. Launch the boarding craft, Scott ordered. The Spearhead shot out from the Defiant's launch bay covered by Ben Carter's fighter wing. Velcron point defense weapons tried to shoot it down, but the human fighters created a protective screen, absorbing fire meant for the shuttle. Going in, called the Spearhead's pilot as the shuttle latched onto the Devastator's hull. Cutting torches activated, burning through the ancient metal. Sergeant Megan Brooks was first through the breach. Her Marines poured into the alien structure, weapons ready. The interior of the Devastator was dark and cold, filled with machinery that hummed with barely contained power. "We've got automated defenses," one Marine shouted, as robotic guardians emerged from alcoves. The machines were humanoid but moved. With mechanical precision, their weapons charged and deadly. Megan's squad opened fire. The powered armor gave them strength and protection, but the Devastator's defenses were formidable. 2 Marines went down in the first exchange of fire. "Keep moving," Megan ordered. "We don't have time for a prolonged firefight. Ben, we need that route to the power core." Ben Carter had downloaded the Devastator's layout from Dr. Sophie Turner's data. He guided the squad through the twisting corridors, avoiding major defensive clusters when possible, and fighting through them when necessary. "Left at the next junction, then down 3 levels," Ben instructed. "The power core should be in a central chamber." They fought their way deeper into the structure. More Marines fell to defensive systems and Velcron warriors who had teleported aboard to protect their ultimate weapon. But the human soldiers pressed forward with grim determination. Outside, the space battle continued. Captain Lisa Hayes' squadron had been reduced to 7 ships, but they were still fighting, still drawing enemy fire, still keeping dozens of Velcron vessels away from the main battle. "Ma'am, we've lost main shields," Danny reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. We can't take much more of this." Lisa's face was set with determination. "We don't have to take much more. Just long enough for Ben to finish his mission. Reroute all remaining power to weapons. If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as we can." The Ranger fired its remaining missiles at a Velcron cruiser, scoring direct hits on the enemy's engine section. The alien ship exploded in a brilliant fireball. It was Lisa's 9th kill of the battle, but she took no satisfaction in it. She was just buying time. Deep inside the Devastator, Ben's team reached the power core chamber. It was massive, a spherical room hundreds of feet across with the core suspended in the center like a captured star. Energy arced across its surface, barely contained by ancient force fields. "This is it," Ben said, pulling out the device Sophie had given him. It was a small cylinder filled with sophisticated electronics designed to create a cascade failure in the Devastator's power distribution system. "How long to set it up?" Megan asked, her Marines forming a defensive perimeter as more automated defenders approached. 2 minutes, maybe 3. I need to integrate it with their systems." Ben moved toward a control panel, his fingers flying across the alien interface. The language was incomprehensible, but the mathematical principles were universal. Sophie had been right. The power core was unstable, held together by precise calibration. If he could disrupt that calibration. Velcron warriors burst into the chamber. They were elite troops, heavily armored and carrying weapons that could punch through the Marines' protective gear. A fierce firefight erupted. "We can't hold them," shouted one of the Marines as 2 of his comrades fell. "You don't have to hold them long," Ben replied, still working on the control panel. "Just keep them off me for 1 more minute." Megan took position directly between Ben and the Velcron warriors. Her powered armor's shields flared as enemy fire struck her. She returned fire, dropping 2 enemies, but more kept coming. 30 seconds, Ben called out. Admiral Henderson watched from the Defiant as more human ships fell to Velcron fire. They had lost 14 vessels now, over 2,000 lives, but they had also destroyed or disabled 38 Velcron warships. And more importantly, Ben's team was still alive inside the Devastator. "Sir, Velcron reinforcements jumping in," Katie reported. 20 more ships, Scott's jaw tightened. They couldn't fight that many more enemies. Not with their current damage. All remaining ships concentrate fire on those reinforcements. Don't let them reach the Devastator. Back in the power core chamber, Ben finished the final connection. The device activated and immediately warning alarms began blaring throughout the Devastator. "It's working," Ben shouted. "The core is destabilizing. We need to get out of here now." "Retreat," Megan ordered. Her squad began falling back toward the entry point, fighting every step of the way. Ben ran with them, watching as the power core behind them began to pulse with increasingly violent energy. They reached the spearhead with only 12 Marines left.